Hello, and welcome to the Dyson Leadership Podcast, where we try to add value to leaders of all ages, stages of life, whatever experience level you have. Bring on guests to talk about some engaging topics, talk about leadership experiences, different books, other things that can add value to you. Today, I'm joined by Nicole, who I will let her introduce herself. She is from London, England, and has great topic that we're going to talk about and engage back and forth on today. So I really think you guys are going to enjoy this interview and really enjoy what we're going to talk about. So Nicole, how about you go ahead and introduce yourself and share with our audience a little bit about what you do and just kind of give yourself an introduction here for us.
Hey, thank you for having me, Nick. So I'm Nicole Aly with a Y, and I'm a leadership coach, and I empower first-time managers in their first year in leadership to overcome the transition from contributing to leading, the overwhelm, the stress, to be able to build relationships with their teams, to be able to inspire and develop their team members, and really build relationships that inspire everyone to follow them. Not by fear, but by connecting, by empathy and understanding how to connect with every individual based on their personality, their experience. And I've been in leadership for about 12 years. I've managed teams in continuous improvement, in service delivery, logistics, finance. So I have different experience dealing with different types of pressures and different personalities and cultures from all over the world. So it's really a pleasure to be here, to be able to share a little bit about what I do and how leadership can be an inspiring and a developing topic.
Absolutely. And I think that's one reason when me and you connected and started talking about chatting that really resonated is a lot of what I do here in my area. I'm in the foothills of North Carolina in the United States, and a lot of what I do is I work with the up and coming leaders or people who are looking to become managers, kind of approaching that stage of their career. And I get to work with them on the soft skills and the relationship building and building the type of influence they want to have on their team. So I think that's one thing me and you kind of resonated on is I heard a little bit about you and we talked the topic back and forth is that's something we both do in our own respect, in our own areas, in our own careers. So that's kind of a nice topic. So the topic that we've talked about and want to kind of engage and go back and forth on is being a supportive leader and specifically building relationships in that. Because for me, I know leadership is, I believe it's all about influence, the connection you have with people, how you can positively impact them in their life, their career, truly helping people become better, whether that's as a professional, as a person. And a lot of that starts with the relationships, because if you can't have good relationships, you can't support people. If you don't have those good relationships, you can't really build them up and grow them. So that topic for me is fantastic, and I'm looking forward to chatting more about it. So Nicole, to start us off, what makes you most passionate about that topic? Like what really pulls at the heartstrings there to talk about building relationships as a leader?
I think there are so many different reasons, but I think that one of the most powerful things that we have as leaders is being able to help people and support them and to see them develop and transition from where they are now to where they want to get or to reach their full potential. And I think being a leader means that, just like you said, it means to be supportive, to create an environment where everyone can thrive, to be able to set an example of the skills and the behaviors that you want to see in people. And without building relationships, you can give orders, you can try and do as much work as you want or can, and you still won't make as much of an impact or a difference as you would by actually building relationships and getting to know people. And I think for me, in my personal experience, I saw different talents in different people, and they don't always know them. They don't always know how to choose how to get to their potential, or to be able to know that they are not good at something or they can be better at something. And the power that a leader has is that they're able to see that in people, and they can only see that and develop it and support them by building relationships, because everybody's different, and we wouldn't be able to know those things because sometimes the team members are scared of the manager and they don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing or ask for help, or one person could be spending 3 days on one task that somebody else can do in an hour, and those things you don't see, the team members don't see, unless you start building those relationships and really connecting with your team members to be able to help them get there. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. And I think as well, like you said, being a leader, you can impact so many different people's lives, and that has a ripple effect, then impacts their personal lives and their families and their future career aspirations. So it's a lot of power, a lot of responsibility, but in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great way of looking at it. So I'm thinking of several things as we talk about relationship building, and especially managers and leaders to their team, their employees that they supervise. One thing that you said, and it's very true, there's a lot of people that are intimidated by managers and leaders, that if I ask them questions or I seek out help from them, I don't know how to do my job. It's kind of their fear or their thought. They're afraid of it looking bad. And so there's a lot of people that are hesitant to approach or build a relationship. You also have people that, I've seen it in my experience, where they worry about being seen as they're sucking up to a manager. They're trying to get good graces or good favor with a manager in some way. And so they're kind of hesitant. They're like, oh, yeah, I can't do that. My team will think I'm just trying to be nice and get some advantage. But in my experience, that's typically not the case. There's obviously people that would try to do that. But most of the time, if you build a relationship, it's just connecting with a person first and foremost is one way I always look at it. But from your perspective, for our audience today, what would be some practical things that they could start with from your experience, things that you've learned that could help them start branching out and building relationships with either their manager, or on the flip side, a manager or leader to their team? So kind of two different approaches to that. What would you recommend for people in that instance?
So I think for a leader to build relationships with their own team members, I would say start by leading by example. That is the most powerful thing that you can do, because other skills can take some time to develop. It can be overwhelming or nerve-wracking because you've never done it before. You're in a new position and now you're responsible for all these people. So I think leading by example is one of the most powerful things that you can do. Mirror the behaviors that you expect in your team members. Ask them for feedback so that they feel empowered to then ask you for feedback and start approaching you and to start connecting with them. But I think definitely leading by example is one of the most powerful things that you can do with your team members in the beginning, especially when you are still learning. And the values and the character that you are is what trickles into the rest of the team, not just what you tell them. It's like parents with their kids. They will tell them one thing, but they will do something else. They'll say, don't be on your phone, but then be on their phone. And then the kids will be on their phone. So I think mirroring the behaviors that you want to see in your team members is very, very important. And like what you said about they are scared because they don't want to feel like they're sucking up to the manager, I would say it's your responsibility as a leader to approach each team member, to build specific relationships with each team member so that they feel that they can be themselves around you and connect with you in their own way. And if you do that with everyone in the team, nobody can feel like, oh, that person is doing too much or that person is not doing enough. Right. But in terms of your own manager, it's a little bit different, because I think you need to get to know your own manager before you kind of start those relationships. You need to start by understanding their expectation. So I think to build relationships with your own manager, you need to learn about their expectations and what they value, what they want from you. So starting by asking questions. Some managers don't give feedback to their team members, and I'm not saying just new managers, but even managers in like years and years of experience, they just think everybody will figure it out. So I think asking for feedback, not just about how they want to manage you, but about themselves. What do they aspire to be? What is a priority for them? What do they care about? So I think it's a learning curve from both perspectives, because if you are the leader in the middle and you've just transitioned into leadership, You have to have different skills, or you have to have different approaches to build relationships with your team members and with your own manager. But starting small, asking for feedback, and leading by example is definitely what I would recommend to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's great. I know for me in my career, I've been privileged to work with managers who actually fall on both ends of it, where I've had managers that are really great at building that personal connection and reaching out intentionally to build relationships. And I've also seen it on the flip side where I've had supervisors who did not do that. So I've been privileged to see both sides. So I've been able to see the impact and experience it firsthand from my perspective. And for me, one of the things that I learned in those types of instances is sometimes it's just the simple things that make a big difference. A lot of people underestimate the simple things where it's, how was your weekend? Or do you have any weekend plans? Did you do anything fun, this past week? Or if you were out on a vacation or taking a trip, was it a good trip? Did you find anything interesting? Just very simple conversation points. And it's not that you're getting into the other person's life or being inappropriate or stepping too far. It's just simple small talk between people. And it gives them the opportunity with such generic questions, very simple questions. They can share as much or as little as they're comfortable with. And so even just simple points like that, I've found to be very impactful. Do you have any other thoughts as far as other simple things that you've seen in those types of instances that help people build relationships?
Yeah, I completely agree with your points, by the way. Simplicity is just keeps you going. It keeps the momentum going, and it keeps things straightforward. The more that we complicate things, the harder they can become, and the longer it can take to connect with different people. So I definitely agree with that. I think having those chats before everybody was working from home, it was easier to just come into the office and say, hey, morning, everyone, how's it going? But you have to keep making that effort, whether you are in an office place or in that kind of environment, or whether you are working from home, just connecting with everyone in your team, asking how they are, seeing how they feel about different things. And I don't, like you said, they can choose what to answer and what they don't answer. And you can build that knowledge over time to see what people are comfortable with. So ask the questions and let them take the lead in how much they want to answer. But something else that I would like to add is one-to-ones are so powerful. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. And it's really, really sad. It's one of the things that really frustrates me. One-to-ones are so, so important. And I think it doesn't have to be a one-to-one where you are going through work and discussing issues and giving them instructions. It doesn't have to be just about that. Of course, you need to have those type of conversations as well. But I would always recommend having at least 5 minutes in every one-to-one that you have where you go into personal topics. And it could be, how are you? How's everything going? What do you like about what you're doing at the moment? What do you not like? Where do you want to develop? If they have any personal commitments, personal hobbies or aspirations, get to know them, because that will help you connect with them more. And again, if they feel uncomfortable or they feel distant, over time, they will start getting more comfortable. And I would also say, share things about yourself. Be vulnerable with them to be able to give them some of that information as well, so that they can reciprocate that same behavior with you. If you're closed off and you're constantly talking about just work and need to get this done and that done, it's going to create a little bit of friction. So you need to be able to be open-minded and keep some time to discuss those relationships and those behaviors so that you can connect with them better. But yeah, simple is best. Definitely spend some time getting to know your team members on a personal level to really connect with them.
I think there's two things that you said that I want to kind of touch on that absolutely are spot on. So one of them you mentioned in just a passing comment, but it's very impactful. I want our audience to really catch this, is one, to take time to get to know your people. And the second thing you mentioned was it takes time to build those relationships. Mm-hmm. You can't learn in 5 minutes everything you want to know about your employee or have that strong relationship. And the same, it's not going to happen in a week or probably even a month. This could be months of you just having these small talk conversations, passing conversations, where that knowledge, that information is building and growing to where they are more comfortable with you. They do open up more, they do share more, and you can learn more about them. Kind of similar, you mentioned career aspirations. It's not always common to get a new employee in and they start on your team, and a week into the job, they say, oh, my career goals are, I want to do this type of role, this type of job. I want to achieve these types of things. Because then a lot of times early on in those jobs, they're wanting to learn the job, learn what's expected of them, do a good job, and then kind of feel out what the setting is and the situation. They're not going to be open about career aspirations right away. Not always. Some people are. Some people are just upfront and honest, which that's fine if they are, but that's not always the most common for sure. Another thing that you touched on that I think is really important is, sorry, the thought just left me. Really, it ties back into just taking that time, because I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of people don't take time to really connect and build with people. So part of what we had kind of talked about and had for the topic is building relationships. But I think this is a good point to kind of segue a little bit. We talked about being a supportive leader, and to truly be a supportive leader of other people, you need to have these relationships in place, which is why I think it's important we talk about relationships first. So when we talk about being a supportive leader or supporting your team when you're in those types of roles, Nicole, for you, how would you describe that for our audience of being a supportive leader?
I would say that being an understanding leader, being available and approachable to your team members, for them to be able to ask for help and not feel like they're being judged or being penalized for asking and approaching you, because that's actually your role. That's part of the job. Being a manager is different to being a leader. And you can't be a successful manager without being a supportive leader. Because being a manager of processes and getting work done and completing tasks and meeting targets and deadlines is all great, but you're making your life so much more difficult and you are impacting your people in a negative way if you are not being a leader as well and being inspiring and building those relationships. So I think to me, it means that you are actively listening to your team, you are connecting with them, making that effort to really understand who they are, what are they passionate about, what are their career aspirations. And I know what you said, a lot of people see that as a scary thing to talk about, because then it makes them look like they're just coming to get something and then they're moving on to something else. But actually, if you, as a leader, if you know that in the beginning and you can support those team members to get there, it could take 6 months, it could take 6 years, it doesn't matter. While they are in your team, they will be so much more productive, they will be so much more committed, and they will work as a unit, as a team, a powerhouse to be able to achieve those goals and the targets and all of the tasks that you want to do. So I think definitely putting the effort in to understand your team members, to really learn about them, to build those connections and those relationships so that you can help them, because by you helping them, you're actually helping yourself and you're helping the rest of the team, and you can get to know so many different things about them. Some people's strengths are best suited in different tasks, and some people's development areas are not relevant to them. So if you're just going to go to whatever you think is the right thing without actually building those relationships and learning about those team members, you could end up spending your own efforts, your own time, and the team members' efforts and time on things that are not productive for anyone, because they will feel, like they're not understood, they're not valued, they are not heading in the direction that they want. So I think starting with relationships is my number one advice, and it continues to develop and grow, because you may be feeling comfortable to make a relationship with one person because you feel comfortable with them, but not somebody else because they're a little bit different to you. So it's very important to start with those relationships, because you can utilize everybody in the team in a way that helps everybody in the team, including yourself as a leader.
Absolutely. So the thought that lost me a little bit ago, a comment you made brought it back to mind, is dealing with career aspirations. And I want to kind of connect it to what you were just saying, as well as some of the thought that I had earlier. But with career aspirations, I think it's very important as you build relationships, like you said, to identify what those are as quickly as possible. there are some employees, kind of to my point earlier, that they're likely not going to come in and say, "Oh, I want your job. I want to be a manager, a leader, and I want your job." That's probably not going to happen. That's probably not going to come off well. But if you can start to learn what people want to learn, grow, and develop, I think it's vital to the success of an organization. I've seen numerous research studies. So I come from a human resources background, and I've seen a number of studies in regards to recruitment and retention that, especially among millennials and Gen Z, there is a strong desire to see training, development, opportunity, succession planning to see what kind of jobs I can move into as people retire or leave the organization. They want to see those opportunities to grow, climb the corporate ladder, move into more leadership focused roles, and even leadership itself, the soft skills that go into leadership. There's a big desire and push for those among young professionals because they want those skills and those abilities to help them in their career. So if leaders are able to build the relationships, identify those, and work on developing those in their team, that helps with the recruitment, the retention. It also helps develop the next group of leaders that will take over in an organization and grow from there. That's just a huge thing for an organization as a whole. So a quick story from my own personal experience for our audience is I've been in a specific role in the past where I was asking the question of, hey, I want to learn how to do this. And it was a certain technical skill. And I kept asking, and I got told, not yet. I got told it's not in the budget. I got told, we'll get to it eventually. It took me continually asking. So don't be afraid or upset if you get told no initially. Keep asking, because if you're persistent, sometimes it comes up. It's great if it happens the first time. That doesn't always happen. Similarly, I've worked on another team where I was asking about professional development, opportunity for things to grow and enhance my career, additional education, and it was almost instantly a yes. So keep asking if you get told no, or if you get told yes, take advantage and try to learn and develop as much as possible, because the more you can kind of utilize a supportive leader, if you have one, is great. Or if you're in a leadership role, if you can be that person to help bridge that gap and be a supportive leader, do that for your team, because that makes a huge, huge difference for them and what they need to be successful in their career. And I think ultimately it improves employee happiness. It makes people happy when they see themselves growing. So Nicole, do you have any kind of final thoughts as we're talking about the relationships and being a supportive leader? And then once we get past kind of your final thoughts, I've got a few wrap-up questions that I'll hit you with after this.
Okay. I would so I said earlier about leading by example and how important that is. But I think the other thing is to ask for help. A lot of new managers and managers in general don't ask for help because they're scared they're going to be seen as they are not knowledgeable enough or they're not capable enough to be in that role. And if I had asked for help in the very beginning, I would have saved myself a lot of mistakes and trial and error. So ask for help. It's not, like you are asking your team members how you can help them because you really want to help them. And there's nothing negative about that. It's for the continuous development and improvement of everybody in the team. The same is true for you. Ask for help. Don't hesitate and be vulnerable. Admit your mistakes. Obviously lead by example and focus on connecting with your team members, and not just your team members, everybody else, your stakeholders, your own manager, but your team members you are a team. You're not on your own, and you can't be successful if your team is not successful. You can only be successful together. So I think that's very, very important to really make that very clear, and for people to feel empowered to want to work together as one unit, as a team.
Absolutely. Those are some great thoughts. So one final thought on vulnerability, because you mentioned it. Recently, I heard an old teaching by John Maxwell, and he was talking about speaking at a conference to a group of executive leaders from an organization. And that's something he was challenging them to do, is be vulnerable, admit areas of weakness that you recognize, but then also explain how you're working to improve. And he shared the story in that instance of an executive from that organization that approached him and said that they couldn't do that. They couldn't share their weaknesses because they were an executive. They had to look strong. They had to look like they had all the knowledge and in control. And John responded to this individual and told them, your employees already know what your weaknesses are. They already see where the gaps are and what you're not doing well. So just admitting the vulnerabilities shows a level of humility and you recognizing where there's areas you can improve. And then when you share what you're doing to actually improve on those vulnerabilities, they also see you've got an action plan, a strategy, and they learn to trust you more. So if anybody on the podcast or watching on YouTube, you're looking and thinking, I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to admit those things. If you've got a team, they probably are already seeing things that you could do better. They probably already recognize it. So you're just being open. You're being honest. It shows a level of authenticity, being genuine with them, and they'll really appreciate that if you actually open up and do that. So Nicole,
I would also like to say just one more thing about vulnerability. I wouldn't say it's a weakness. Reframe that. It's actually a strength, because not everybody is strong enough to admit their vulnerabilities and their mistakes. So flip it round. It is a source of strength.
I like the way of framing that, because a lot of people do look at it as a negative. So I love spinning things to a positive. That's a great thought. So Nicole, as we wrap up, I've got a couple final kind of wrap up questions for you. And one thing I always like to ask any of my guests that jump on here, I believe leaders are readers. So we all read a lot of different books, a lot of different things, a lot of different perspectives and ideas. Do you have any books that you would recommend to our audience that really has been impactful for you, or you've taken a lot of good information from that you would be interested in recommending out to other people to read?
Yes, there are so many good books. One that comes to mind straight away is Start With Why, Simon Sinek.
It's a good book.
Great book. But recently I've been listening to Dare to Lead by Brené Brown, and that was a very eye-opening book. The way she frames courage and how you can really tap into so many different powers within you and different skills by always choosing courage, and the fact that it's not easy, but the rewards are just so amazing and purposeful. Definitely recommend reading that. It's a great book.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm familiar with that book as well. Would highly recommend it. So for our podcast audience, wherever you are listening to or watching this podcast, if you check the description, I'll list links to those books in the description. So if you're interested, you can go and find those. And Nicole, one final question for you is, if you have a bit of advice that you could share out to maybe a up and coming leader, a first time leader in some way, just a young professional, what would be just a key bit of professional advice you would be willing to share with them?
I think focusing on personal development and continuous improvement, that for a leader, for themselves, like to be able to learn to be a better leader, just because you have the title manager or leader doesn't really mean anything if you're not practicing those skills and you're not being a supportive leader like we've been talking about. So I think continuing to develop yourself and investing in your own development and investing in your team's development. At the work, the pressures, the deadlines are never going to go away. They're going to just keep coming, and the pressures will always be there. But when you are focusing on developing yourself, or how to handle those situations better, how to build resilience, how to connect with your team members, to support them to develop, the work will get less. It will feel more productive. Your team members and you will feel happier being at work, which is what we all want. Who wants to do a job when they're miserable and they don't like their boss or they don't like their team members? So I think definitely a powerful thing that you can do is to focus on development, whether that is reading a book or it's listening to podcasts or it's taking action that makes you feel uncomfortable to be able to get to the other side and develop and learn. That would be my final.
Yes, absolutely. That's some great advice. So Nicole, what is a way that our audience can connect with you? If you've got a website or social media, something that you would be wanting to share, what's a way that our audience could find out more about you or just connect with you online?
So definitely LinkedIn. The website is still to come, but definitely
Okay.
LinkedIn. You can find me on there. I'm very active. Nicole with a Y, Nicole Aly with a Y. And you can see different courses that I provide. You can email me or book a chat. I'm definitely on there.
Absolutely. And I'll link your LinkedIn profile in the description for the podcast and video on YouTube. So, our audience, if you want to connect with Nicole, follow her and see what kind of services she offers. Definitely check out the description and check out Nicole. Nicole, I just want to say thank you for jumping on and talking. This has been great conversation. I absolutely love this topic. Relationships are vital. Supporting your team, developing your team, that's all key to leadership. So, this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed having you on as a guest. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really great to be here and to connect with someone who's like-minded and believes in the same aspects of leadership. So thank you very much. And thank you to all your listeners as well.
Absolutely. So for the listeners, please be sure to subscribe, follow along as we continue to post episodes for this podcast. Wherever you consume the content, whether audio or video, please leave us a rating, leave us a comment, something. Let us know what you like about the podcast or something that you took away from this episode that was really impactful. Let us know in a comment, and that's really helpful. Really helps us grow. If you find something of value and you want to share this out with other people, please send this out, share this with your network. Helps us grow and reach more people. Follow along, posting episodes of this podcast every week. So look for another episode coming again next week here on the Dyson Leadership Podcast.